What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are, oh God, I'm dying already. Today we are talking about Season 2, Episode 22, The Wire. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've got like a chip in my brain that's causing me to cough. But I'm here with my regular co-pilot, Mike and Deglio, and my temporary co-pilot, Pretzel the dog, sitting on my desk here, sniffing as we go. How's it going, Mike?
It's going well, Keith. It's been a week already, even though it's Tuesday here, so we're full into it. My Philadelphia Eagles, if you've been paying attention, have made it to the Super Bowl by decimating anything even remotely called a quarterback. We'll break their arm for you. So that's exciting. We had a fun weekend because of that. It feels a little surreal, but I'm excited about it. And then, Keith, we actually started looking at some homes, and I realized looking at a house is different than looking at an apartment. When you're looking at an apartment, you do everything to convince yourself, oh, I could live here. And when you're looking for a home, you temper that with, oh, do I like this? Do I like it enough to wipe out everything I've ever had and worked for?
Forever.
Yeah. So
it's a 30-year lease minimum.
It's very sobering. It's very sobering. It's a great neighborhood where you're looking at, and basically it's instant equity. You buy these townhomes in these neighborhoods that are flipping over, and I know for a fact they're flipping over. You make a lot of money on this house, but unfortunately, I'm not at a point right now where I'm looking for like real estate investment opportunities. I'm really just want to know where I can put my big TV. Yeah, I want to know where I can put my big TV.
Where does the big TV go?
Yeah.
No, and it is an endless mixture of the two. Well, we're gonna find you quarters somewhere.
Yes, I know it. I'm feeling good about it. But Keith, until then, I have my good friends Garak and Dr. Bashir to keep me company. I had no idea where this was going, but let me tell you. Hold on, I have to be no spoilers. So this week's episode of The Last of Us, which is one of my favorite shows on TV right now, not to mention Poker Face, which I'll talk about on Geekly this week, next week. Anyway, The Last of Us, which I'm digging on right now, had one of the most beautifully romantic episodes I've seen on television in a really long time until I watched Deep Space Nine this week.
The beautiful romance that continues.
Romance. Oh, the romance. Bashir just wouldn't let him go. I'll never let go, Jack. So we'll get to talk about that today. I'm excited.
No, he is going to find a way for them both to float on the door. Damn it. Yeah, very exciting. You know who else is probably excited about all this? And that is our patrons, who have been getting so much ridiculous bonus content up on the internets, including watching Mike see the romance unfold before his very eyes. Bonus episodes, unboxing, let's plays. I put up the second part of my never to be produced Star Trek graphic novel. It is all up there for your enjoyment. Who's enjoying it these days, Mike?
Well, Keith, you've got Brian Kaufman. You've got Worf's Boot Shivs. You've got CRM Productions. You got good old Casey Clark.
Yeah.
Jason Moe, Charles Babbage, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky. Big fan. Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, at Grim_Toys, and the mysterious Delusions at Noon. You'll notice some negative space because it's just waiting for you. Listener, watcher, lover of random content on the internet. Go ahead to patreon.com/K&M. Become a producer on this show. Get in while the getting's good. It's just like real estate in South Philadelphia. Any day now, it's going to be worth something.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really curious what exactly it's going to be worth. But if you want to get in on the ground floor, you can do so at patreon.com/K&M. Spell out that and get all of the Keith and Mikey goodness. It made me uncomfortable just even saying that phrase. But, you know, discomfort is part of our brand.
Do you want to know what the feelings of pangs of buyer's remorse feels like? You too can know simply by clicking in that URL.
Mike, you can't have buyer's remorse on your house. You haven't even put it in offer yet.
No, all I did was drive home and feel disappointed. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, there's one thing I do know in my life. I know what I don't want. And that's actually maybe will serve me at some point.
I think that's actually very, very important. And, you know, you're going to find the right place. Just cast your nets wide. When it's right, it'll tell you. All right. Well, let me tell you what's right for us. What's right for us is starting to talk about this episode, Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 22,
Every week, Keith.
The Wire, every week. It's crazy. The amount of prep work I do on this show is astounding. And yet somehow I never actually think to update that. But it's coming. It's coming. So we're going to talk about this episode, which aired on May 8th, 1994. Mike, do you have any thoughts and feelings about May 8th, 1994?
I do, Keith. I do, because me, like many of you, was probably watching television. And you probably want to know what was on. What were we watching at that time? This is my stalling voice.
Oh.
Keith, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman was rocking the second of a two-parter, just like we did last week. It was The House of Luthor. And I believe that's when the dad, who was the Lionel Luthor, was like handing off the baddie stuff. I think there was like his death or whatnot.
Who played Lionel Luthor on...
I can't remember the actor's name, but the second you see him on the Google machine, you'll know exactly who it is. But Keith, more importantly for us, oh boy, we're talking multi-parties. Do you know what ABC? This was night one, Keith, at 9 o'clock, part one. Can't remember how many parts there were, but you were watching it. I know you were, and so was I. The Stand. The made-for-TV show. I believe it was either 3 parts, 3 2-hour movies. 4 parts. Yeah, well,
4 parts.
It was awesome. That was on. Of course, the Flintstones were on Fox at 7 o'clock. The Flintstones movies starring ye old John Goodman and I believe Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes. It was. Yeah, she might have come in for the second one, but no, I bet it was both. Yeah.
And of course, if you were watching in the Saturday market, we had the commish at 10 o'clock. We had an ice skating special at 9 p.m. on CBS. It was just called Artistry on Ice. America's Most Wanted rounding out Fox's block. Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Awards were on. And of course, Empty Nest, Sisters and the Mommies was on NBC.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, that Stand miniseries. Not only did I watch it then, I watched it recently because I wanted to watch it before I watched the Paramount Plus adaptation. And it was like, for the most part, it still holds up.
How's the Paramount one?
From Kathy Bates? Decent.
Okay.
Decent. It never. I think the TV miniseries actually really got the creeping,
oppression
dread feeling, of the first part of that, which I think is always the best part. I'm always much more interested by like the transition as the world falls. Anyway, blah blah blah. So you know what they used to navigate a lot in The Stand.
What's that?
Because there was no GPS when that was written. So when they had to travel across the country, they had to rely on, what do you think they had to rely on, Mike?
Maps?
No, they didn't. Maps, yes, but in order to navigate the map, you need to be able to lay your eyes on that will help send you in the right direction.
A compass?
Oh, for Christ's sake, the sign is back. Ace of Base is back in number 1 of the top stuff.
I saw the sign, and it told me where to go. I saw the sign. Then came Randall Flagg, and he gave me a plague that killed everyone. I'm talking about The Stand.
I tried to give Mike the sign, but Mike did not see the sign at all. He walked into the sign until that was bad. All right. So Ace of Base is back with the sign after taking couple weeks off. The top movie, another one I don't remember whatsoever, a movie called With Honors, starring Joe Pesci, Brendan Fraser, Moira Kelly, and Patrick Dempsey.
Oh.
I don't remember that whatsoever, but I do remember, of course, our hard-hitting news from the weekly World News headlines. Talking about demons from hell. They're back. More satanic creatures sighted in California, Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah. It's a good thing we're out here on the East Coast because we don't have to deal with those demons from hell, which were coming out here on May 8th, 1994. 4.
Ooh.
All right. Well, there it is with the hard news. Let's talk about this episode, The Wire, which was directed by first-time Trek director and first female director on Deep Space Nine, Kim Friedman.
Words.
I know. This is the first of 6 episodes that she would direct of Deep Space Nine, plus 4 more of Voyager. And this episode has a teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolfe, who last wrote on Shadowplay, which we enjoyed, which means it is time for just a soupçon of trivia. Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia. Okay. So just a few things on this one. First off, this episode marks the first appearance of the Obsidian Order, which is the name of one of my fantasy football teams. So if you're playing me in fantasy football, you might be playing against Garak and the Obsidian Order. The original idea of this episode was actually to have Kira be addicted to battle stimulants since her days fighting in the Resistance, which I think makes great sense, and it's sort of like realistic and heartbreaking, and I feel probably would have been a very good episode. But they decided not to, mainly because of having to follow that through moving forward in the series. But I feel that maybe if this had come up in season 4 or 5, they might have actually gone there and stayed with that. I love what they did here, but I feel like that would have been a very interesting story. As I mentioned before, Kim Friedman was the first female episode, first episode directed by a woman. Keith, wake up! And Kim did such a good job. She was handed the season finale of this season and the season premiere of next season. So that is how you know you did a good job, when they're like, oh, never mind, you have the 2 most important episodes over the next year. And I agree. All right, so what was the Next Generation doing? Well, Mike, the USS Enterprise, its computer brain is becoming self-aware in an episode called Emergence. So look out, that episode's weird, but I do like exploring the idea of what happens if your ship becomes self-aware, and what do you do, and what are the ethics of that?
Riddle me this, Keith. Why is it that some television shows, networks order 23 episode seasons, and then some order, what is this, like 26 episodes?
26. I think it has to do with the fact that the first season is only 19 episodes long.
Oh, so they were like, just get them on the back end?
I think they were like, that we're going to even it out. We're going to get to the regular amount of episodes, but but a lot of things happen with that. I know The Office, they were super successful, so they ordered like 30 episodes one season, and then there was a writer's strike, which screwed it up, and so it's not always super tidy how many episodes a series gets, at least in network, because you're dealing with a lot of other moving pieces. So the guest stars of this episode include Jimmy F. Skaggs as Bohica and Gillespie as Jabara, who also played Hildebrandt on The Next Generation. But most importantly, we have Andrew Robinson back as Garak. And Mike, did you clock who this was as Enabrin Tain?
Yeah, I can't. I of course didn't know his name, but he's that guy who's in everything.
Not just in everything, from our other series.
Oh yes, The Practice as well.
Of course, it's Paul Emmy winner for The Practice, Paul Dooley as Enabrin Tain. So excited to see him.
Listen, I don't want to get too ahead of my too big for my britches here, but was there an Emmy nom potential there for our dear old Garak? Because he gives one hell of a performance, a tour de force this week, I think.
He sure does. But you would be disappointed to know not a lot of acting Emmys on Trek. They never gave the Trek actors the due they deserved. The effects teams all the visual and sound effects, my family included, got a ton of them, but the actors never got the due they deserved.
All right.
But we're going to do it because we're giving out something much more prestigious than Emmys or Oscars. We're handing out self-sealing stem bolts at the end of this episode. So if you want to know how many they got, stick around.
Listen, many podcasts. There are countless podcasts who give out stem bolts. I mean, they're like a dime a dozen. However, if they break, I hope you have some sealant because you have to seal them personally.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to. Yeah,
you come here for those stem bolts that seal themselves. They're self-sealing. They're in hot demand, and we'll see how many this episode gets before Keith pulls that magic switch. Remember, only Keith can pull the switch that says, we're rebooting the whole system. We're adding, what is it? We're adding, what did I say? How are we doing it?
I don't remember I have no idea what you're talking about.
Remember there was that great episode, and I was like, Keith can supersize the scoring somehow.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think we're probably not that far off. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, you don't want to be stuck with your bolts in need of sealant.
No.
And those bolts are usually in a really inconvenient place to get to. It's up a Jeffrey's tube. You have to reach with an adapter. You don't want to be sealing them. All right. So
nobody has to go up my Jeffrey tubes until I'm at least 50. That's what my doctor said, which makes me feel good.
Oh, well, good for you. Well, good luck with that. Hopefully Chief O'Brien will be there in your time of need. Let us, please, for the love of God, leave this bridge and head into our screening room,
Mike,
and talk about the episode.
Hit it.
And now we can't monetize this episode. Thanks, Mike.
It was quick. It was fast.
It's not how it works.
It is how it works.
Lies.
Let's be honest. Nobody knows how it works.
Nobody knows.
YouTube is on a destructive path to just demonetize everybody for everything.
It is a mysterious thing. Speaking of mysterious things.
Nice.
In the trivia of this episode, somebody wrote on IMDb that we see a certain species that are going to matter a lot later walking around in the background of this, which wouldn't make any sense. And guess what? You actually see what they're talking about in the background of this shot here in our screening room.
There's a better shot later, though.
It is not. It is not what you think it is. It is a similar-ish looking species, but it is not the species we're going to care about later. So everybody calm down.
Wow. Okay, Keith.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, IMDb, you got to vet some of that stuff because you're not right. So here in the teaser, we begin with Garak and Bashir taking a lovely romantic stroll. Garak is complaining about a late client who's from a species that doesn't believe in the concept of time. Mike, I believe you were that species in your 20s.
Yeah, well into my mid-30s, some would say, but jury's out.
Yeah, that was actually one of the first things when Mike and I decided to start a podcasting empire together. Mm-hmm. The first thing I said, like, Mike, I know your species doesn't understand the concept of time, but let's walk through it. And you know what? He learned.
We got there.
I would say that these days, Mike's a punctual dude.
Not only that, Keith, called 3:30 today, but then it started to snow, and I thought, if I don't run now, I'm not going to run today. And I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to have a little self-discipline. So I went out and I did the run. 4 miles of hills. I walked back in the house at 3:27. And I was like, I could text Keith and say, give me an extra 10 for a shower. But I said, no. He's going to do that thing where he's upset because I said something and then I was 10 minutes late to it. So I'm here. I'm wearing my running clothes. I'm sweaty as hell, but I'm here.
But you understand the concept of time.
I do. TikTok.
Oh, I love that I'm such an asshole. He didn't shower.
Well, that's one way to say it.
Boy, we're learning some things here on the pod today.
We're supposed to do that on Geekly. I don't know what we're supposed to do at any time. So
we're not supposed. Nobody wasn't. All right. This is how you build a friendship, folks. Also, on the screen, the friendship of Bashir and Garak. And we find out Bashir, super sleepy. And Garak, jealously, like green with envy and jealousy, asks, were you on a date with a lady? But Bashir, no, was actually on a date with a Cardassian book called The Never-Ending Sacrifice. That Garak gave him, so maybe. But we find out it's a boring book because it's Cardassian propaganda, the repetitive epic in which we learn that service to the state is all that matters. And the date seems to be going great, but Garak gets kind of cranky, and then he winces. He's got a headache. Bashir tries to take him to the infirmary, and Garak walks away. And that is our teaser. All of a sudden, the stroll took a turn, and that's enough, to head off to the credits. So in Act 1, Dax and Bashir are examining a stabby potato plant and can't figure out why it's not healthy. Bashir...
Doop, da-doo. I was walking in the neighborhood flower district when a strange and unusual plant caught my eye. And suddenly, and without warning, there was a total eclipse of the sun. It got very dark. Okay, moving on.
Guys, if you'd like to cast Mike in your community theater production of Little Shop of Horrors, there is your audition tape. I think it's a winner.
Playbill just says Old Seymour.
Old, decrepit Seymour. As we've talked about on the show before, in order to be Seymour now, you gotta be
ripped.
It rhymes with schmuckable.
I'll tell you, it's my favorite story. I did a production of Little Shop of Horrors I was very proud of at the Mayfair Theater in Philadelphia, the Devon Theater in Mayfield, Philadelphia, which is no longer in operation. It was their first and only season. Great production, incredible.
So you killed off an entire theater company?
No, the neighborhood did. Anyway, great production. I really enjoyed it. Everybody in the cast was stellar and lovely. I got a write-up in the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can probably still find it if you want to Google it. Anyway, they referred to me as Woody Allen's chubby cousin. My hometown newspaper. And I was like, you know what? Chubby's bad enough. But you just compared me to Woody Allen. Those are two things you probably don't want in print on the internet forever. But there we go.
Oh, hold on. I need to get this in context. I've got to get this in context. Oh, from Devon Theaters 19... Oh, that's WHYY? Wow.
No,
oh my God, there's Mike.
It was like 2010, yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
I was kind of chubby. I'll give him that. But why'd you have to fat shame me?
I know that would not play today.
No.
All right. So
avenge me. Tell my story.
Oh, well, I don't see it in the I don't find the Inquirer, but the WHYY in Philadelphia, which is where Terry Gross is based out of, said it's a delight.
Oh, well, there you go. I'll take that. Blurb that for me.
Well, it didn't say you.
Michael Andeglio, ... It's a delight.
It's a delight. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, those pictures of little Mikey. We got to put those up somewhere. All right. Anyway, the hapless floral assistant Seymour, played by Michael Andeglio.
That's true. That's factually accurate.
Oh, wait. So it talks about a rogue fire alarm going off.
Yeah.
In the middle of your performance.
We had to go out and then, fire alarms. You got to go outside and wait for the fire department to come. So we were all standing together. I was just standing in costume with the audience. So then we went back in after the fire alarm, and they curtained up, and I just picked up my line directly from where we left off, stopped the show for like 15-minute ovation because they were just like celebrating. Audiences love to cheer along if they feel like you did something special. It's like, no, I know the lines already. It's not like I had to remember something, but it was fun.
Oh, yes. No, you know what? No, all right, so I have the Inquirer. What it says is the schlumpy character who creates this monster is played by Michael Andeglio, who elicits the same empathy that Woody Allen did in his early bittersweet non-molesty days. Indeglio even looks like a more robust cousin of the comedian. Robust. He didn't call you.
I would argue that's worse than chubby.
I mean, subtext is clear. A better fed version of. Where the hell are we?
We are somehow
so far
really
off the rails. I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to put in like another time code for when we lose the rails and we're gonna get back on.
Keith goes on a whole diatribe of Mike's review from when was that? 2009?
2009, yes.
That's a long time ago.
That is a very long time ago. It feels so recent, but it's not. All right. Where were we? Oh yeah, when you were doing the Act 1, talking about the stabby potato plant.
That was still over 10 years later than this episode aired.
Yes. So I can't figure out why it's not healthy. Bashir checks the computer. It's missing a fungus. But you know what? Who cares about the stabby potato? Because Bashir is only concerned about his true love, Garak. They've been eating lunch together once a week now for a year. Late that night, Bashir walks through the promenade. The security gate at Quark's is apparently only at top, so it's more of a blind than a gate. But I don't think we were supposed to notice that. And he spies on Garak talking to Quark. And Garak needs something, and Quark is going to get it for him. Bashir butts in rudely, and Quark lies and says, oh, he's just ordering a sizing scanner for his tailor shop. And he offers Bashir a chance to go get busy in the holosuite, which for reasons beyond me, he's like, no. Later, Bashir helps Cisco with his tired voice. Then O'Brien shows up. I think if you actually listen to that scene, I think Avery Brooks had a cold or something. It's very clear. I wouldn't have noted it if he didn't. Maybe he was like, I've only got one scene in this episode. You hit it a little hard the night before. You come in for your 2 lines. But O'Brien shows up, and Bashir is snooping on Cardassian medical files, obviously looking for Garak's files in a wild HIPAA violation, which I can't imagine Starfleet would go for.
Yeah, well, Odo's basically wants to start a police state security-wise, and Bashir's looking at people's like medical records. We're sort of losing the thread of the ideal. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yes. Although for Odo, that he's always wanted to Dick Cheney this situation, whereas Bashir is usually the starry-eyed Starfleet. But you know what? Love makes your heart do things.
Yeah, we've all opened somebody's mail before. Come on.
So
I thought it was for me.
I don't know about that, but can't say I've done that. But look, we've all Google stalked someone or somebody. So I just did. I just Google stalked Mike.
You did.
So Quark calls and says, I need you in my bar because Garak is there getting tanked. He drunkenly apologizes to Bashir, and Bashir decides to take Garak home. But he's going to take a stop at the infirmary on the way. Garak's like, hell no. But then he collapses, and they beam directly to the infirmary. So where were you at this point, Mike, in the story? Like, what were you thinking? Did you have any idea what's happening?
No. I did. I mean, I knew it was happening. I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't plot where we were going. I thought he was just sick and the episode was going to be about Bashir trying to get him well, which is ostensibly true.
But it's more.
It is more. It is better than that.
Okay, so in Act 2, here's where we start.
I liked that we beam. It was such an emergency. We don't need ambulances anymore. We can just beam down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't do that all the time. And actually, in season 3 of Discovery in the future, they sort of just do that. They just like beam everywhere. If I wanted to like beam upstairs, it's like beep, beep, if you have the energy for it. I don't know if that's going to help you with your steps, however. So Bashir has found an implant in Garak's brain. He discusses it with Odo, who assumes it's a punishment device implanted by the Cardassians. Another HIPAA violation. I don't think Garak signed off Odo on this, but it's been there for a very long time. Bashir suggests to Odo that Quark will know what's up. And Odo says he's already noticed Quark sending messages to Cardassia in a wild Sixth Amendment violation. I don't know. I think the ethics of all the characters had to take a step down for the story pacing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it was like, if we actually took the time to do all of this ethically, we'd still be watching the episode.
Along those lines, if we're in the writer's room, if part of the spin of this episode is going to be that Garak, we have to maintain Garak's, what's the word I want to use?
Privacy?
Nope. His presence as an unreliable narrator because of all of the obfuscation he does and whatnot.
Right.
Then at some point, specifically early on, we're going to have to give concrete narrative, concrete information, factual information. And if we can't get it from him, we're going to have to steal it, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Odo and Bashir decide, hey, let's listen in on Quark's calls in the middle of the night.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
With a surveillance camera that's just up there. I feel like Cisco doesn't know about this. Like, this is just a little thing Odo does that he doesn't talk about.
So this next scene, Keith, this scene here, you talk often. Everybody talks often. You're my what's the word? I can't.
Talker.
You're my talker, Keith. You're the authority of Star Trek for me. I know that even you are not comprehensive, but you're my authority. So you often talk about how they were so far ahead of the game in prognosticating future technology.
Yeah.
Well, here, they shoot this scene exactly how Apple shoots commercials for like how to simulate a FaceTime call. Like the direct on sort of semi-fish angle lens they use when Quark is on camera. It's like this was a FaceTime call. And it's shot as if it's a FaceTime call well before FaceTime was a thing.
He didn't even blur his background.
Yeah. Well, that just came in 16.3 or 2. So, I mean, come on.
All right. So Quark calls a Cardassian buddy, and they reminisce about Dabo girls, of course. And Quark says, no big deal. I need a little piece of Cardassian biotechnology. And the dude's like, yeah, man, no worries. And he gives the requisition code. And then the Cardassian guy, he puts it in and then freaks the hell out. He should not have clicked on that link because the code is very classified. And not just classified, but classified by the Obsidian Order. This causes Quark to get off the phone real fast and close the tab and clear the browsing history. And Odo explains to Bashir that the Obsidian Order is essentially the Cardassian KGB, and that they're even more effective and powerful than the Romulan Tal Shiar, who we have met previously, who was also sort of their version of the CIA, KGB sort of a deal.
And Bashir says, huh?
Huh? He posits that perhaps the Obsidian Order put the chip in Garak's head. And he goes in to check on him, but Garak has already left the infirmary. So we head to Act 3, and Bashir tracks down Garak in his quarters and discovers Garak injecting himself with a whole mess of pain reliever. And Garak says, look, buddy, there's nothing you can do for me. Bashir says Quark couldn't get the item that Garak needs. And this is where we start to see Andrew Robinson's performance become more and more complex, because it's a very similar beat to what we saw with Gul Dukat last week, when he realizes, like, oh God, I'm totally trucked, but I don't want to show that I know that. Same thing here. Once he realizes that Quark can't get him the piece, he has to really wrestle with the consequences of that. He looks gutted and asks for his hypospray to give him what would probably amount to a fatal amount of more sedative. His brain nerve cluster, or whatever, is breaking down severely. Bashir wants to get him back to the infirmary, but Garak does not want to be on display for the Bajorans to gawk at. So a lot of interesting just character elements there, and amazing Andrew Robinson faces you're seeing here on your screen. So yeah, I mean, it's the beginning of a really interesting and layered performance. You know?
Yeah, because and I love the way they pace the performance as well, because ostensibly we've only really known him in a comedic role. Even when he's done some 007ing, it's been with a wink and a nod and kind of
an arch.
And yes, an arch eyebrow and a turn of phrase, a quip. Here we're starting to see a little bit more than that, and then they're going to open the floodgates pretty soon.
Yeah, well, we're seeing vulnerability from Garak for the first time, and his discomfort, right? Because part of the ways that Garak, does not show vulnerability is that he never appears uncomfortable, and he never appears conflicted. And here, I think his fear of being gawked at by the Bajorans is legitimate. I think it's real, and that's not a color we've seen from him. So Bashir knows about the implant and says he thinks it's a punishment device. Look at that screenshot. That's so funny. Apparently Bashir farted. And Garak laughs at this, and he explains what it is. He was given this device by Enabrin Tain, the head of the Obsidian Order, because he's got a whole bunch of classified secrets in his head. And the device is designed to put out pleasure chemicals if he were ever captured and tortured. So if he were to be tortured, it would kick in and he would be immune to pain. But it was never meant for continuous use. And he goes on a monologue here explaining that living on this station is torture for him. The temperature is too cold, the lights are too bright, and the Bajorans hate him. All of this we set up, right? In the pilot, they talk, Sisko's like, it's too hot in here because Cardassians like it super hot. And in all of the flashbacks to when it was Tarek Noor, the lights are much dimmer. So clearly, being in an environment, because if you really think about it, being in a room where the temperature is 5 degrees too cold, like it's no big deal for 10 minutes or an hour, but perpetually that gets really rough.
Wet socks, baby.
Wet socks. Yeah, exactly. And the same thing, it being too bright. So he says he turned on the device and, like a drug, you try it a couple times, you feel better, and then he just decided to leave it on. And it's now been on for 2 straight years, and it's starting to break down. So he's addicted to these chemicals. O'Brien tells him to fight. And Garak says, maybe I don't deserve it. And he tells, long before the Dark Knight, begins telling the story of how he got here. He says, during the occupation, he was a Gull in charge of the mechanized infantry on Bajor. And shortly before the withdrawal, some of his Bajoran prisoners escaped. His aide, named Elam, tracked them down to a Cardassian shuttle headed back for Tarek Noor, i.e. Deep Space Nine. But he was prevented from searching the shuttle by orders from Gul Dukat. So Garak had the shuttle destroyed, killing the escapees, Elam, and 97 civilians. And Garak says, I was just following orders, but one of the civilians killed was the daughter of a Cardassian bigwig. So he was stripped of his rank and exiled. When it's a pretty bleak backstory for Garak here. And to his credit, Bashir still tries to treat him. But he needs to turn off the device and deal with the withdrawal. He grabs the triggering device out of Garak's desk. So what Garak did, I was confused by this, so I went back and checked it. So Garak built himself a triggering device to be able to manually control how this worked. So we've had this big reveal, Mike. What are you thinking here about this story Garak told?
I mean, I despite myself, I guess I took him at his word. I was trying to figure out. I could also. It seemed. It didn't shock me. I mean, if he was a deep spy and a bigwig in that army, then doing these kind of atrocity things didn't quite surprise me. I didn't quite put together the whole. It was a little confusing, the whole device giving me endorphins if I'm tortured, so I'm using it to dull the pain of this torture was a little bit convoluted, but I get the point of it by the end of it.
Well, I mean, which is why I think this tying back to the idea that it would have been Kira using war stimulants. I think there's a tie there because that's very much a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in wars, we have fed our soldiers amphetamines and all sorts of, uppers and downers and pain meds and all sorts of horrible things. So, like, that's very much a thing that is part of war. One of the horrors of war are that sort of a thing. So it makes sense. So later in Act 4, in the infirmary, Bashir continues working, but he doesn't have enough data on Cardassian physiology. Then Odo comes in, wanting to question Garak. He's trying to track down 4 different murders he suspects were done by the Obsidian Order. Bashir says nope, and Odo is frustrated, but accepts it honorably. Later, we see Garak is clearly in pain. More time passes.
Yeah, we get a whole montage.
We get a whole montage of him going through withdrawal. It's tough, and Bashir loyally sits vigil as he goes through this withdrawal, and it's sort of heartbreaking to watch him suffer like that, and also to see Bashir, who at this point believes that story, being incredibly loyal to him. But later that night, Garak wakes up in tears. It wakes Bashir up, and Garak is furious. His tears have turned to rage, and he says that the past 2 years were a waste. And he starts to villain monologue while breaking stuff. And he tells story number 2 about what happened. And he says that he was the protege of Enabrin Tain, who everyone was afraid of, and that he, Garak, was going to be a powerful man. But then we learn that he threw it all away by letting those escapees go instead of destroying the ship. He was interrogating and torturing children on the eve of the end of the occupation, and he took pity on them and gave them money and let them go. The punishment was the same. He was stripped of his title and exiled. And he admits that the only thing he's enjoyed for the last 2 years has been having lunch with Bashir. And this is when I turn off my work phone. He loses it. And then there's a fight. They struggle. Then Garak has a seizure. And we realize we are in Garak's quarters. So this was a huge moment here for Garak and for Andrew Robinson's performance. All right, Mike, tell me what you were feeling at this point.
This story then redeems him, but I also it rang true to me because I said it flippantly at the top about this being romantic or whatnot, but it really did really examine their relationship almost romantically, or I guess you could a deep friendship, same difference, but someone who you have emotional ties to, empathetic ties to, because even though it was kind of like the DTs kind of brought it on, regardless of what the instigation was, there's always that fight you have with a loved one. Doesn't matter how much you love them, where you hit your boiling point, you hit your red zone, and you just start to say things that that are designed to hurt that other person, right? To the triggers, you know them well enough to point, and you do it because you think it's going to make you feel better, but it doesn't. And so I really felt like this scene captured that. I had a visceral response to it because you can point to the handful of times in your life you've done that Hopefully it's not more than that, but I know some of us have worse tempers than others. And I'm still ashamed of almost all those moments with all those people.
Sure.
And this one, this was, and for this character who's, like I said, been pretty, I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, but he's been pretty.
Well, he's always had the intentional distance,
yes, and control,
artifice,
yes, the control of his performance, if you will,
and like there's always an element of it where he's like, I'm always 3 steps ahead. It's always a little bit of a game. It's always there's a remove, there's a distance between him and everybody else on the station, and even him with Bashir. And what you see in this scene, regardless of the veracity of what he's saying or the half truth, what comes true as what rings true is that he cares deeply about Bashir, and that their relationship is real. Yeah, what he thinks, and he has real feelings about their relationship, and he's probably not lying that the best part of his week is lunch with Bashir, and you can understand. So he has the seizure, and they take him back to the infirmary, and they literally have to shock his heart to get it going again. Bashir can't figure out what's wrong. The implant is shut down, but the chemicals are still there. Bashir checks a bunch of samples of Cardassian leukocytes, and they medical technobabble frantically.
Keith, this was like a screenshot directly from that game we've been playing. Direct.
They popped in a CD-ROM, and they got very confused. But something is still wrong, and they need some leukocytes or blah, 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 technobabble, medicine. But Garak says, stop. Now I'm going to tell you the truth of how I got this scar. So Elam wasn't Garak's aide. He was his friend, who more than brothers. I think this is a sly reference to him being his lover, right? Or at least opening that door. And Enabrin Tain took a liking to the two of them and made them powerful. They were known as the Sons of Tain. And then there was a scandal about the rumors of someone letting the Bajoran prisoners go. The rumors said it was Garak who did it. So Garak worked to try and frame Elam for it, only to discover that Elam had already framed Garak. And that's why he was exiled. So he betrayed his quote-unquote friend. And then Garak thinks he deserves what he got for trying to frame his best friend. But he asks Bashir for forgiveness. And Bashir forgives him for whatever he did, even though he still doesn't necessarily believe him. Which I thought was a really nice moment. And again, like, we're seeing vulnerability from Garak. Regardless of what's true and what's not true, I think his desire for forgiveness is true, is genuine there. And his desire for it to be Bashir who gives it to him, I believe, is also genuine. I thought it was a really touching scene.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bashir decides, because we still need those leukocytes, we still need that technobabble.
Yeah, absolutely.
He grabs a runabout and heads off on a mission to talk to who was really responsible for this. And he arrives on Cardassia Prime, who we now know is named Cardassia Prime, the homeworld of the Cardassians, and beams down to talk to none other than Enabrin Tain himself. And he immediately starts snooping on his computer before Tain shows up behind him and welcomes him by name. Now, if I'm going to go and visit the head of the KGB, I probably don't want to get caught snooping around on the computer.
Keith, don't you find it interesting that they were the Sons of Tain and we're collectively known on the internet as the Sons of Taint?
Yep. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so that tain't funny, buddy.
That wasn't good.
No.
That was bad.
It's not good. That's okay. That's okay. They're not always winners.
Speaking of not always winners, you know what I thought was a winner? We totally blew by it early on. One of the first scenes when they're dealing with Little Shop. No, that's because we were talking about My Little Shop. Bashir has that great line where he pays homage to the original series, and he says, basically, "God damn it, I'm a doctor, not a botanist." Thought that was good.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good throwback and good catch, Michael.
Thank you.
Oh, look at that. More square turtlenecks. That's pretty impressive. They're able to like.
You're a distinct looking person
fabric.
when they stick so much makeup on you, but you still know exactly what actor it is.
You still, yeah, oh, that's Paul Dooley.
Yeah.
He's also got that iconic voice.
Mm.
So Bashir asks Tain, how do you know my name?
And
Tain
what
proves,
drink I like.
Yeah, he proves he knows everything about him. And the only reason that he was able to get there and beam into his house, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, is that Tain told the military to allow him to get there. So Tain asks, "Hey, how's Garak doing?"
So is that because he does his research, or is he like spying on him through Garak?
No, I don't think at this point Garak is a part of this.
Okay.
I think we're learning how powerful and how knowledgeable the Obsidian Order is, and how knowledgeable Tain is. So he asks him how Garak's doing, and Bashir says he's dying. Tain says, "If you're truly his friend, you should let him die, because a life in exile is no life at all." And so he asks Tain for help on the Cardassian biochemistry. And Tain says, "I'll give you the information because I want Garak to have a long, miserable life surrounded by people who hate him and knowing he'll never go home again."
Aww.
That's harsh.
That's sweet.
That's really quite something. That's a line. And but before he leaves, Bashir says, "Whatever happened to Elam?" Tain laughs and says, "Garak has been doing what he does best. Never tell the truth when a lie will do." And of course, we find out that Elam is Garak's first name. And just before he leaves, he says, "Tell Garak that I miss him." So Bashir heads back to the station, and he sits alone eating lunch when he's joined by Garak.
Who's this cat? This is just a cross. This awesome.
That was just a cross. That's who people thought were a different thing and isn't.
Okay.
Well
said.
Look, I have to work around spoilers.
Okay.
We're getting there soon. We're getting there very soon. But spoilers.
All right.
So Garak is now healthy, and he wants to move on and forget about the last 10 days. Garak says Odo accused him of being a member of the Obsidian Order, which he says, well, that's just silly. I'm just a plain, simple tailor. And Bashir asks, which of those stories you told are true and which aren't? To which Garak responds, they're all true. Even the lies? My dear doctor, especially
the lies.
The lies.
Good line. Great line.
Great line and great way to finish that up. We have a lot to discuss about the Garak of it all. Like today, we're just really sort of getting through the summary so we can dig into Garak, his past, and the Obsidian Order. But before we do that, we have to do a certain vocab quiz.
Sure do, and I didn't go to the other thing too early, which is kind of a win.
Oh my God.
And now it's time for Mike and Deglio's Star Trek Vocabulary Quiz.
All right. Well, this one should be pretty obvious. Mike, what is the Obsidian Order?
That's
What's happening over there?
That's Keith, that's the special military branch of baddies, the deep-seated KGB-esque thing that Garak was a part of.
Indeed. And next up, Mike, what's tryptocyanine?
Oh yeah. That's a thing you need to get to the guffin of the MacGuffin.
Sure.
To heal the thing that's breaking the thing.
I think that was the chemical agent that he was putting in his brain to make himself feel better. It's the meth of Star Trek.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let us tip one back in Quarks and come along home. Here we are at Quarks. So this is going to be a difficult one to really adjudicate. But Mike, were there any wormholes in the plot of The Wire?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the whole thing, right? They're kind of all wormholes. We don't know what the true story is, which does kind of bring up, I guess we could view it either as a flaw of the episode or maybe it's its benefit. We'll get there, though. Because the question becomes like, what did we actually learn? But I think for me, the wormhole is the whole MacGuffin. Like, is the device that was implanted? So we learn the whole time he's just drug addict is kind of what we learn, or that he's being tortured. Or he doesn't like.
He basically, yes. I mean, basically, he has this ability to put drugs in his brain that he started abusing. You know, he basically, essentially abusing pain meds.
Yeah. But so is the only real kind of like information we learned is that he was like a super soldier spy, but we kind of already knew that, right? We just didn't know the name of the branch he was in.
Huh. That's interesting.
Well,
That's
we knew that he was a super
it.
spy, and we knew that people knew he was a super spy but hated him because he did something, because it's been in previous episodes. So like, what? We just learned that like he hates everybody, that he's actually not happy-go-lucky. He's just kind of miserable. And in fact, there was even during that scene, he said that he enjoyed those lunches. But then there was another part of that scene, if I'm not mistaken, where he was like, I hate these lunches. You're stupid, and I hate your stupid ass face.
Right. Well, he's like, I hate the fact that this is the best part of my week,
right?
Because you're and all of those things.
Go ahead, Keith. Say it. Stupid ass face. You want to say it?
Your stupid ass face. Yeah, that's very interesting. That
so
is
like I really liked the episode. I
takeaway
loved
from
the
that.
performance, but I get into it. I'm like, what did we actually learn?
Huh.
Maybe.
That's funny.
I mean, if we take. So 66% of the stories tell us that he did something what we would consider chivalrous. He let innocent people go. Two of the stories have that information in it. One of the story, well, assuming that, then that raises the question of who actually is this Eris dude, right? Like, was that his actual lover or friend, brother, or was it him, Elam, or was it him, and he just like manufactured the conflict between them, and he was leaving a breadcrumb that it was him that did these things.
Well, okay. There's a lot to sort of unpack there with what
we
you
should
said.
I think hold on. Let's. I'm going to take that off because this is really
because it's hard to sort of break down this way.
You know what? Let's do it this way. We'll come back to my comment. Let me just say, I think that scene with the two of them during the fight is my favorite scene. I think it's the best scene. Because we get to see the whole rainbow of his performance.
Yeah, I think so too. Although for me, I loved the montage of the sort of vigil.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was very Rocky too, if you will.
Well, it was very Rocky too, and also it's not something we see on Star Trek very often. I thought it was a different tonal thing than we've seen. I don't think we've seen a montage like that on Deep Space Nine. I don't think there's anything like that on Next Generation. So I love the sort of passing time director flourish there from Kim Friedman, which I'm sure it was in the script. But I actually really liked seeing that little window into time passing. All right, so that was my favorite moment. Yeah, so let's just sort of see if we can unpack this. So for me, I think we actually learn a great deal.
Interesting.
Here in this, you're right that we have always suspected that he was some sort of a super spy, and we have always suspected that obviously something happened that put him in this position. Is he faking that something went wrong, and is he actually there as a full spy? Is he a half spy? Who's he loyal to? And we had the little Casablanca episode. We've he has sort of like his denials ring pretty false, so he kind of wants people to know that he's a spy. He's broken in, and represented the government a few times, so it is all sort of murky. But I think I think learning about the Obsidian Order, right, is very important here, and learning that it is a separate entity. Right, so Cardassia has basically three main entities. You have the civilian government, you have the military government, that Dukat is part of. But the Obsidian Order is a third separate thing. So you have the civilian government's afraid of the military is afraid of the Obsidian Order. And so to know that Garak is associated with that, he's not just a regular spy. And that if he worked with or directly had this kind of a relationship with the head of it, he was like a really serious and powerful person. So
far as we know, he's either blacklisted because he didn't send a bunch of kids to get slaughtered, or what was the third potentiality? Was that he let somebody else did it, and he framed people thought he did it, and so he tried to frame his buddy, right, to get away from it. But that he got pre-framed. But then, of course, we learned that they're both him. Yes. Which for me, I walk out of it thinking that. Oh, go ahead. Yes, I mean, so like I said, if 66% of that is true, it leads me to believe that what I guess we learn is that his morals align more closely with humans, that our human understanding, than he does with the Cardassian sort of military flagship modus operandi. Yeah, well, I think it really gets down to how ruthless is he? Because at times it seems like he's very ruthless and capable of pretty much anything, and at the same time he's capable of mercy, and he has feelings and empathy. And I think that for me, having Elam and Garak briefly exist as two separate people, I think are representative of Garak's internal conflict. Right? I think that's what that means. I think he's been at war with himself, with his own sense, with his own empathy, his desire to be a son of Tain, right? And to like be as ruthless and be that powerful person. But there's still a part of him that felt for those, the Bajoran children. And I think that was real. And I think the same thing with the Bashir thing, right? That there's a part of him that just wants to stay removed and hate this place or whatever, but he has genuine feelings for Bashir, and he probably hates that part about himself. He finds that vulnerability, that empathy, something that is both a big part of him and something that he's been taught to hate and is really wrestling with. And so, not to get too far into therapy, but, a lot of people suffering from addiction of one kind or another, the generator of that is, it's usually trauma based in some fashion, but sometimes the most difficult trauma we can deal with is an internal conflict. And I think that we do learn. So we learn he was what the Obsidian Order is, and that he was a big part of it. And we learn that for the first time, really, how internally conflicted he is. And well, I like the conflict. We see that it's mirrored in Bashir in this episode, not to that much of an extent, but I think he's with the scene with Dax, where she's basically like, well, come on, don't be fooled. He's clear. You can't be friends with someone who's lying to you constantly. And Bashir's like, oh, yeah, totally. He's got a bad poker face. You can see that he's struggling with, I know I shouldn't trust him or like him, but I kind of do. So it is mirrored. Yeah, well, and it's and also like, what do we like about Garak, right? And I think it's part of it is the mystery, right? Part of it is the what is his deal. But I also think that like
we can tell that he has goodness in him. He has goodness and darkness in him, and he's struggling with it. And I think that is a very appealing, very human part of the condition, that we're all wrestling with the good and bad in ourselves, and the various masters that we serve, right? Because Garak is a person of many masters that he's all trying to serve, which are mutually exclusive from each other. You can't serve your life in a Federation place and the Cardassian government. And which Cardassian government are you serving? Do you really want to be a part of that? Do you not want to be a part of that? It's a really interesting character study. So to get to the point, I think we've actually learned a great deal, even though, do we really know which of these stories are true and which combination and what that whole thing? No, I don't think we do. I think part of Garak's inherent to his character is the mystery, is we don't really know. But I think we get more pieces of the puzzle. We may never get all the pieces. We may never get the corners, but I think we're getting pieces here that matter a great deal. Mike, what else?
I don't have much else. I really liked it. I really loved the performance of both of them. I thought there was a lot of empathy and humility, and it's a lot. It wasn't a very thick, complicated plot line, and so there wasn't a lot of twists and turns. We needed to kind of to pace it, and so it really relied heavily on both their performances, and I thought it was really well done. I think if I had to put a number on it, I really liked it. I don't think I loved it. Still don't. I think it was I don't want to call it a bottle episode. It didn't really move our plot forward much in the grand scheme of things, but it did move their relationship forward, which is kind of the purpose it was serving. So I'm going to give it 78 self-sealing stem bolts.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think part of that's hard to talk about now at this point in the series without understanding how
the Insibians, what did I say? The Obsidians come back and are more important. Yeah, it was nice with that first time we got that mic drop.
Yeah, we're like it's I guess it's not that much of a spoiler that there's more to this,
right?
and that we are laying some groundwork here. And you're right, it is a bottle episode, right? And it was another one of those episodes late in the season, like Duet was, where like, oh crap, we're out of money. Do something with hardly any special effects and just our existing sets, please. I mean, they obviously redressed something for Tain's quarters, but like not particularly heavily. Also, there's no B story. There's no B story, no C story. It is like Duet, basically two characters talking to each other. That is what the episode is. And I think you're right. We're really seeing, and I said this in season 1, where we're like, with both the character of Bashir and Alex Siddig's performance, we're like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing both of them really develop and really start to find some traction there. And so this is some of the most likable Bashir's ever been.
It's kind of a shame, we won't go down this rabbit hole, but it is kind of a shame that they put the kibosh on them having maybe a deeper kind of relationship, because
oh my God.
It's clearly so fertile, and there's so much storytelling there, and I can't wait till you see episode 3 of The Last of Us, Keith. But they really had an opportunity to tell a different story here, and they, I understand, but it's a shame.
Yeah, it was all sort of subtext, but 100%. If the show were being done today, they would be allowed to.
They have that chemistry,
absolutely.
Just sometimes, just because of chemistry on set, you can be like, hey, we didn't plan this, but it's reading this way, and you've got that chemistry. Let's go with it. Maybe they didn't have the courage at the time, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly both of the actors were 1,000,000% up for it.
Right.
They're like, that's what we're playing. Let's do it. Let's lean into it. And I think it would have added. Well, but here's the thing. I think for me, it is not in conflict with canon that this is what this is for Bashir. I mean, for Garak. I genuinely think in canon with no rewrites that Garak is in love with Bashir. And I think that is another part of the internal conflict, because I can't imagine that the Obsidian Order, the Cardassian government, is particularly welcoming of gay characters. So he's probably wrestling his internal homophobia as well, and probably species phobia or whatever that would be, to be in love with a human.
Yeah. Oh my God, really going for it. But like, and that's also like with our small-minded, always reading of, you, in order to be in love with someone, you must be sexually attracted. Like this could be all divorced from sexuality entirely. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
So there's a lot of nuance that clearly can't be captured in a 45-minute network television script. But for all we know, you know, like you said, the storytelling is the storytelling. The performances are the performances. Maybe they had a meeting and they're like, well, we're never going to see them hook up, right? And then like we can't show that on TV. But that doesn't mean you can't read what you read in the story.
From what I understand, it was Berman who saw the dailies of the first time we saw Garak, or the first couple episodes, and he's like, no, tone that shit down, because he clearly got the subtext. But you know, I think it's still there in Andrew Robinson's performance.
Well, clearly that's why we're talking about it, because
it's a beautiful performance.
Yeah, I think so.
And he said subsequently that it was 100% intentional. Like that's exactly how he played it, and I think it's great. I think it's really interesting, and I don't know. It's a missed opportunity, frankly, storytelling wise. However, to get to the self-sealing stem bolts, which we've promised for you, Mike gives it 78. I like it a little more than you do.
Okay.
I actually found this to be a very compelling and satisfying episode. So for me, you're gonna get. You're going to get 87 self-sealing stem bolts.
There's a gulf there.
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, there sure is. And you know, and part of it is looking forward, and that, you know, knowing what about this is important, both from a character point of view and a world building point of view. You know, at this point, they hadn't planned to bring Tain back, but spoiler alert, we might see more of Tain. So lots of cool stuff. So there we are. We're bifurcated, but certainly an interesting episode. So next week we are talking about crossover. So look out. Mike, do you have any idea what that is yet?
Do we get some Voyager and or TNG characters on? Is it a literal crossover?
Oh, good point. No. Alas, although it is a soft sort of crossover with the original series, or it has ties to the original series.
I'm down. I'm down.
Fans who know exactly what I'm talking about. I went back and I watched that episode to see whether we needed to have seen it before this, and I think we're okay. I don't think we necessarily need to have seen that episode, but it's going to be an interesting one. Hold on to your butts, and while you're holding on to that, but you might want to give us a like, give us a subscribe. You can send us an email at keithandmikeentertainment@gmail.com if you have any thoughts and feelings about this, or you want to sponsor the show. You want us to pitch your self-sealing stem bolts. We would be honored to do so. You can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M. Spell out that and get all sorts of delicious goodies. You can check out our Look at My Star Trek Toys series. You can watch Keith and Mike play Star Trek Infinity or whatever that game is, and we'll never remember what it's called.
We got to do this week, Keith. We need to get some in the can before I forget entirely what the hell we're doing.
We have like 4 weeks, but yes. Yeah, we're gonna do some of that, some point and click CD-ROM action, and you can also check out K&M Geekly, where we just, you know, unlike this, we just sit down and talk about whatever the heck we're thinking about, because we don't do that on this show.
Yeah, this week we look at my eyeballs.
Yeah, we do. We look at Mike's eyeballs. So there it is, folks. If that's your thing, there's going to be lots of it. So yeah, hey, so Keith, that's our things. Yes.
I'm not looking at you.
Oh, he's doing it again.
These aren't my eyes.
Aren't Mike's eyes. So if you're just listening to this, the audio feed, and you're not seeing Mike's creepy ass digital eyes, that's probably a good life decision. But if you'd like to make a poor life decision, you can leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting service you're listening to. That would really help us get more earballs on this show, and we would very much appreciate it. Okay, that's it. Next week, we'll be back with Crossover. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.